So here we go. I'm going to do the introduction. We've got 8 major things on the introduction today. I presume that you are now recording it, Mr. Recording Man. So the second part of this meeting will be looking at ahead to the summer of this year and what's happening. We'll have local services dealing with the key areas of the activity this summer. We're going to have Neil Carney doing the travel study, and we're going to have the AONB people in here as well. We're going to have a destination management plan, which Maureen's going to update us on it. Then we're going to have an open discussion, and we'll hopefully make some notes for what our next steps could be. And hopefully that will all happen in a reasonable time and not keep us too far away from our dinners. So the next thing I have to do is just tell you a little bit about the key objectives of our council. We're looking to reduce the pressure on our communities associated with increasing visitor numbers. We want to provide a safe and welcoming visitor experience to everybody, but we also want to take into account residents as well. We want to produce the special qualities, protect the special qualities of the Northumberland Coast A and B, as well as other locations, and protected landscapes across the county. And in order to do that, tonight we've got people from the north part of our county in Barrick, and also those from the south part of this area in Amble, who are not part of the AONB, but really part of our area. And I know that the council, Paul in particular, is doing similar sort of meetings elsewhere in the county to try to help them from Druidsville Bay, for example, and also inland. And also we want to support the economic recovery of Northumberland since COVID. I think that's probably all I need to say to start the proceedings. Somebody wants to be in, so I'll see if I can admit them. And I'll pass over to first person on our discussion today. And I think that's you, Paul, isn't it?
I think it's Neil Carney.
Neil Carney first, okay. Sorry about that.
Are the slides showing up on the screen yet or not?
Yes, I can see the slides.
Yeah.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Let me just put that there. So good afternoon, everybody. Good evening, everybody. I just really wanted to spend 5 minutes just quickly running through some key visitor survey information that we collated last year. Clearly, there were post-COVID pressures on returning visitors, but also we wanted just to get a very good understanding from the visitors that were in Northumberland last year in terms of their profile, what they were doing, and the types of information that are really useful for us to help with our planning for the coming year. So we conducted 450 face-to-face interviews across the county last year at 10 locations. And I think the primary thing that we found is that there had been a slight shift, as I think people were aware that there was a change in the type of visitor that was taking a domestic holiday post-COVID. Clearly, with many people unable to take holidays overseas, we did see a growth in demand for domestic holidays within the UK, and certainly there has been a bit of a shift in Northumberland. So one thing that we found is that that shift in audience composition last year was not marked, but certainly there were some differences. We found that people were coming and staying longer if they were on a day trip. So the average sort of day trip dwell time was just shy of 5 hours. We found that those that were here were then spending a little bit more money than they had done in previous surveys. So the average spend per day visitor was up from £38 to £41. But what we were also then finding is that those visitors that were staying, so were also staying for a little bit longer, but spending more money. So the average spend for the staying visitor compared to the £41 per day for the day visitor, the average spend for the staying visitor was £275, and that was up from £258 in 2019, which was the last sort of real solid data that we had for spend. So what we did see is that those visitors that were coming back were staying a little bit longer. They were spending more, which is really quite interesting for us. Likewise, what we found as well, that during the summer, and there's a slight degree of the timing of the research that we did here, but certainly during that summer period when we did the survey, we had 30% of all visitors that we interviewed were staying visitors in Northumberland, and that's up compared to the previous year.
That looks like it.
What we then also found during the research was that the booking patterns, that there had been a shift in the timing of people making their bookings to Northumberland, and they were tending to be shorter. So people were booking their trips much more close to the time of travel, which clearly makes it a little bit more difficult for the businesses to plan for their stays, but also puts then additional challenges on visitor management. Well, I think one of the key things with this, though, is that what we did find of those visitors is that 83% were returning visitors. So I think there had been a perception that newer, more, perhaps it was new visitors were coming into Northumberland. 17% of those were first-time visitors, and that's a little on par with how it was in 2019. Typically in 2019, the previous full year, it was 18% were new visitors and 82% were repeat visitors. So that shift in the type of people that were coming, we didn't see that last year, which was really interesting for us to look at. I think two other very quick points on that visitor survey. We did find that all of the visitors that we spoke to, every one of them said that they were made to feel welcome on their visit. 99% would recommend visiting Northumberland, 98% would visit again, and 95% rated their Northumberland experience as 8 out of 10 or above. So the experience that the visitor had was very strong. They didn't feel as though their experience while in Northumberland was impeded or impacted by any kind of post-COVID pressures. So what I've then done for this purpose is look at the responses that we had from the 4 locations along the coast. So we of the 10 locations, we had surveys done at Bamburgh, Sea Houses, Warkworth and Craster in the coastal area. So 172 of our 450 were done in the coastal area, and there were some slight differences here. Some variations really in terms of what we found in terms of coastal visitors compared to county-wide visitors. I think the first thing we noticed is that there were more new out-of-region visitors. So going back to those stats where I said, 17% were first-time visitors. For the coast, there were 22% first-time visitors, compared to the 17% for the rest of for the whole of the county. And proportionately more were coming from Scotland, Yorkshire and the southwest. So it wasn't we didn't see more day or staying visitors from the northeast in those coastal areas. We saw them coming from out of region. We saw fewer day visitors in comparison to the full county picture. So we had more staying visitors in that coastal area. The spend was also slightly higher. So those staying visitors, we had more staying visitors, but then they were spending more while on the coast. So £10 more on average than the average for the county. In terms of accommodation, it was a fairly good split. But what I found interesting with this is that B&B and hotel and camping and caravanning were by far the most popular. Only 5% said they were staying in self-catering accommodation, and only 3% was saying they were staying in second homes. So again, that's a really quite insightful for information that we saw there. And then obviously getting around, getting to the Northumberland, the car dominates. But we did notice on the Northumberland coast that more people were using alternatives to get around. So for the whole county, it was 86% arrived by car, 81% used it to get around. For the coast, 84% arrived by car, and only 56% of those used their cars to get around. So I think the messaging around access, or obviously the interest for people coming to the coast, were very different. So those are the sort of key highlights from the survey for Northumberland and for the coast. I also thought it might help just to set the scene a little bit for the coming year in terms of sentiment and what the national tourist boards are predicting for tourism for the domestic visits for this year. Confidence
Neil,
is growing.
Sorry, Neil, can I interrupt you? Can I
Yes,
interrupt
sure.
you? I think we're still on the first slide, Neil. I don't know whether you intended that to be the case, but I think we probably meant it to be further on. It's up to you.
Yep, my slides have moved on here. Sorry, I'm not sure.
I've got later slides.
Yeah, mine's moved on as well.
Mine has.
Mine has as well.
Mine has.
I think
Mine has as well.
it's just a bit of a lag with the people's broad strengths.
Okay, let's just be mindful. No problem then. Carry on.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, no problem at all. So just some very quick insights from the National Tourist Board in terms of domestic tourism expectations this year, and then I'll move on to some of our own Northumberland expectations. So confidence is growing. The Visit England have been running sentiment trackers over the course of the last 18 months now, and certainly they're seeing the intent for visitors to take domestic tourism trips this year growing. So confidence is up. However, confidence is also up in international trips. So where there had perhaps been substitution for international trips into domestic trips, both of those confidence levels are growing equally as we move into this 2022 season. I think what is important though is the barriers, and the barriers for the last couple of years have been COVID dominated. And what is interesting this year is that barriers are very much more, personal finance dominated. The fact that the cost of living is increasing for visitors has had a bit of an impact. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out, because certainly we're seeing the demand for bookings for holiday trips remain high, although there does seem to be a little bit more nervousness, I think, in terms of people for the year ahead. But for the year ahead, what we're seeing is that businesses generally are very buoyant in terms of what they're expecting this year. We did a survey at the beginning of the year. 90% of all of the tourism businesses in Northumberland that we'd spoken to expected demand and bookings to meet their expectations. The accommodation providers are quite pleased and reporting that the length of stay for their bookings does seem to be increasing. Clearly tourism has been impacted. The impact of COVID has knocked a lot of these businesses, and they are certainly looking forward to 2022 as being a year of more solid recovery for them. We haven't yet got full predictions for this year, but we do hope and would like to think that we would be back to that 2019 value of tourism, albeit from perhaps a slightly lower volume. We may have fewer visitors, but if they are spending more, then it could ensure that the value of those visits remains high. So demand for the year we think will be buoyant, but we think there may be some trepidation around cost of living, but we don't think that will necessarily put visitors off. That's it for me, I believe, from these slides. I don't know if we take questions at the end or if we want to pause for those, Paul, as we work through.
I think it's probably better if we take questions at the end, if you can make a note so you don't forget, and then We can ask in the open session. So I think now we're going to move on then to the destination management plan. If that's you finished, Neil.
I think it's my good self, Jeff, in terms of just local services issues to go through. So just wanted to give you a quick overview of some of the activities that the local services team are undertaking over the coming holiday period. Obviously, we have a big involvement in terms of managing council's car parks, emptying litter bins, managing and maintaining the toilets, and generally working with other partners to try and mitigate as many of the impacts of increased visitor numbers as possible. And to continue, obviously, to provide a really positive experience for both the communities and the general public throughout the area as well. So just on the slide, you'll see there that toilets have been a significant issue for I think a number of years within Northumberland in terms of public toilets, and a desire that the standard of provisions improved. So I'm sure you'll be pleased to know that we have now completed the major refurbishments of both Holy Island that was delayed and sea houses that was undertaken in the last financial year. Those facilities have both cost the council over £300,000 to upgrade. A big chunk of that cost is through what's called changing places provision, which is basically like an adult, more severe disabled provision to enable people with some quite profound access and disability issues to be able to be supported to get out and about in the countryside and the country. So that's a real positive move from the county council to do that at those two key tourism facilities. We're also doing a range of activity at the toilet facilities across the county. We are aware of there's been ongoing issues at Craster in terms of just some of the infrastructure there not being up to the level of usage that it's receiving. So there is works planned there that'll be starting in May to improve the actual drainage capacity of that facility. That's in advance of a major refurbishment of that. And you'll see, and you'll have probably seen in the press, that the county council, as part of its medium-term financial plan for the current year, has committed to a £1.5 million capital investment across all 54 of its public toilets. That does basically include all of the county council's facilities across the whole county. And that's a two-strand programme that basically we're looking at undertaking some fairly major refurbishment works at what we class as key facilities. So those are the main town centre toilets, plus the key ones in the tourism areas, and then undertaking essential maintenance works, so basically addressing any backlog maintenance, any damage, any structural issues, sorting out just the visual, making sure they're all up to a good standard across the piece. This is an ongoing programme. We have started the works that we've already undertaken, two of the minor maintenance, essential maintenance activities in both the Banbury Winks toilets and Magdalen Fields up in Barrick, and are currently on with the ones at Low Newton, are under that refurbishment programme at the moment. That is going to roll forward right through the next couple of years, and we are trying to target as many as we can in those key areas that get the most footfall as quickly as possible. But obviously, when we're talking about major refurbishment works, that does require planning consent. We are talking about changing some of the internal layouts of those, so that is a slower burn in terms of getting through that element of the works. One of the other things that's I suppose less favourable is that during COVID we secured significant government funding to support infection control across the county. That did include an enhanced cleansing regime across all of the public toilets where they were being cleansed on a 3 times a day basis. That funding has effectively dried up from the 31st of March. So we are going back to our normal cleansing regimes at a twice daily visit, a cleanse in the morning and a check during the day, and a cleanse if necessary during the day as well, before they're closed up of an evening where they are closed. So that's returning to the pre-COVID cleaning regimes. It is something we will keep under review. We're also increasing the litter bin servicing during the summer period across the coastal area, and in particular that does include, where necessary, the inclusion of or provision of additional temporary litter bins, primarily just wheelie bins, to increase capacity at peak periods. And that's particularly in some of the coastal towns. And we do have ongoing liaison with Northumbria Police in terms of any reporting of antisocial behaviour, just to try and tackle any issues as and when they arise, and to share that intelligence. I'm sure you've also been notified because we sent out some circulars to those affected town and parish councils that we are, as part of the council's budget setting process, increasing the parking charges across the coastal car parks. That is something that we're undertaking to help manage demand, but also to support further investment in parking facilities across the piece. That will come into effect on the week commencing 25th of April, with the new charges come into play. You'll see as part of that, though, that we are investing in a new visitor car park in Amble. That is a multi-million-pound investment, and the works there again will be starting towards the back end of April. The intention there being that we undertake the car parking provision in Amble. That's around about a 14-week programme. So the intention being that extended facilities hopefully up and running for the start of the school summer holidays. We've also just recently completed the Quayside car park extension in Barrick to help with some of the town centre parking in there, which particularly does get a lot of traffic, particularly during the summer season when the caravan sites in the area open. Parking and just general road issues are an ongoing, I think, difficulty, and that's why we are just looking at this travel study that Ian's going to talk about as well. So it's not just looking at constantly tarmacking over the countryside. We are looking at alternative ways of getting people out and about, and some of that is also just in terms of how we manage those people that are still using the car. So things such as implementing the new road configuration at Craster to try and reduce traffic into the village. That is now going to become a permanent scheme. We've also taken some action to try and support and address the use of motorhomes. Obviously, there's an increasing trend in use of motorhomes across the country as a whole, and that's evident in Northumberland. So we're taking forward a pilot scheme that's now in place at Bamborough Car Park, Amble, Braid Car Park and Beadnell Car Park, where we've designated some of the bays in those for single overnight stays. People have to pay and pre-book to go in those. That's a pilot scheme. We'll see how that works. It does require planning consent before we can take that forward to extend that if we think that's appropriate, but that's something we'll keep an eye on over the current season and see if that's an approach where we basically try to designate areas to direct people where we want them to be and to try and keep them out of those areas where they will cause or have caused problems previously. So it's trying to manage in a more pragmatic way some of that motorhome activity. Linked to that, we've also now opened or partially opened the touring camping and caravan motorhome site at Druidsville Country Park. It's a partial opening at the moment. We are waiting for Northern Power Grid to connect our electricity supplies up so we can open that entirely. But again, the part of that approach is for some additional income generation, but it's primarily to try and tackle some of the fly camping activities. So we're encouraging people to come to those areas and to provide designated places for them to come. To try and support that activity. Parking generally, as I said, is an ongoing problem. We do and have increased our civil enforcement team capacity. That is something that we will be obviously increasing the patrols in the coastal areas over the summer period. We will be looking to use temporary cones and signage again where there's problems and really looking to work closely with the good selves to facilitate that, to support that, and again with liaison with the police to help tackle some of that problem in terms of obstructive parking. And that's one of the key things. We did have a really excellent multi-agency partnership working approach over the last 2 years, more so last year, that involved the likes of Northumberland Police, the Coast Guard, the national parks, the OMB, looking across the county, but with a big focus along the coast to share intelligence and to try and manage and mitigate the actions and be responsive to tackling issues as and when they arose. The other thing I wanted to cover was just on some of the communications activity. You'll have seen previously last year that we put a lot of effort into a Love It Like It's Yours campaign, which was basically a whole media campaign undertaken to try and change and address some of the negative behaviours that we were experiencing in the county from, I think, a new demographic of visitors. And it was really important as part of that approach that we wanted to basically echo the countryside code type key themes. We wanted to do that in a welcoming tone, so not a pointy finger, but a nudge type approach. And we worked with other partners and stakeholders to join up that communications and get shared messaging tackling some of those key themes around travel, about responsible parking, so you're not obstructing driveways and agricultural activities, wanting people to be responsible for the litter and taking the litter to homes, trying to stop people leaving disposable barbecues around and causing fires and having wildfires, which was a key issue on some parts of the coast, and also protecting the environmental wildlife more generally in terms of, you know, dogs on the lead and things such as that, and shutting gates. So that is something that we will be ongoing again and restarting again this year. You'll see from the slide there, we're looking to launch that in June. We are flexible in terms of the timings, so we are looking at basically on a month-by-month basis, just picking out some key themes around wildfires, active travel in July, looking at August primarily to tackle some of the harvesting issues around obstructive parking and also littering, and using a range of multimedia measures, including social media, to get those messages out. But that materials and those resources will be available for other partner organisations to use. Will be hosted on the Visit Northumberland webpage. So we do expect the likes of you know, tourism businesses, and if you want to, your good selves as well, to use those materials and to get those campaign visuals out there to try and change some of those behaviours. And I'd just like to hand over now, I think, to Ian Robson, if he's on the call, just to talk through the visitor parking and transport study that's been undertaken. Thank you.
Evening, everybody. For those that don't know me, my name's Ian Robson. I'm the AO&B manager at the Northumberland Coast Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty Partnership. Just a quick update from us and what's been going on in the AO&B since the last Coastal Summit. So the headline is we've commissioned, as suggested, a study into visitor transport and parking. It's been undertaken by Martin Higgitt's Associates. They're in the stage 1 part of that study at the moment, which should take us through until the end of April, when we expect to get the first draft back from the team. So the study's going to it's a 2-stage process, and it's going to look at issues in the first stage and then find some broad solutions. And then we hope to commission stage 2 as soon as I've managed to pin down the money, which will produce a strategy for ourselves, for the county council, and for all of the partners on the coast, with some long-term proposals, medium-term proposals, and a delivery plan. That'll be the main document that the likes of yourselves will see in the parish councils. The first report, the stage 1 report, will effectively guide stage 2 and produce the brief for stage 2, but we'll certainly use it internally with county council colleagues to make sure we get stage 2 right. So the strategy side will provide a strategy for the county council and others on things like car parking provision, and it'll also provide our strategy on how we decrease the use of the private car to get around the AO&B and to visit the AO&B. So watch out for that. We'll come out with consultation with the town and parish councils on that, likely towards the end of the summer. So I expect probably take the form of our usual parish chairs meetings, and we'll arrange those and come out and see parish chairs with that draft report. So just some news. Oh, hang on, go back. Just some news on what we've done since the last summit as well. We've managed to get and secure with our colleagues in public transport an hourly daytime service for the coastal buses, and we've managed to also secure an additional buses to Boomer. So that'll give us 5 buses a day in and out of Boomer in each direction, which is a vast improvement and actually gives us a usable service into Boomer. So what we'll do on the back of that is a lot of comms around kind of using the bus to get to Boomer to set off on a walk from there. We've, as you can see from the photograph, we've started to, and hopefully you've seen these around the coast appearing. We've rolled out the Coast and Castles branding onto the bus stop flags with some funding we received from the transport department at County Hall, and we will hope to work with the operators to try and roll out that branding onto buses in the near future, onto liners, and produce some bespoke visitor information this year, again following the Coast and Castles connection branding. Our visitor guide is just about hit the streets any moment now. So 42 page, I think it is this year, visitor guide, but we've given over 16 pages as a travel supplement with really good quality information for visitors to get around without a car. You know, we regard that as being so important that we've given that up, and hopefully that should help to inspire people to get out without their cars. So that'll be hitting the businesses soon. AHA are doing the distribution on that. So watch this space. That's me.
Hi.
Thank you, Ian. I think it's you, Nine, and Maureen. I think you're going to talk us through the destination management plan. Thank you, Maureen.
It's me now. Hi, everybody. I'm Maureen McAllister. I'm the head of tourism with Visit Northumberland and Northumberland County Council. I started officially on the 1st of April. No joke. Right. So I'm just going to talk very briefly through the destination management plan. And we're at a really good position with it now. And a lot of the people on this call, I'd really like to spend some quality time with when we start to look at the rollout of the action planning. So if anybody is inspired or interested by what I'm going through now, then please drop me an email after the meeting so that I can get together a group to talk about how we take some of the actions forward. So I've spoken about destination management plan before. It's basically a way of us bringing together all of the work that's going on within the visitor economy to make sure that we've got the right people working on the right things and that we're focusing on the issues. And we're not just crazy developing tourism. We're actually looking at how we can best manage the visitor economy and we can best make sure that it's sustainable into the future. So the vision for all of us is that we've got a flourishing visitor economy, but that combats the negative impacts of visitors and focuses on all of the positive things that can really support local communities and businesses and also protect the natural environment. So we've been working with a bunch of partners. I don't know who's driving me, so whoever's driving can move on. Thank you very much. And so we've been working with a bunch of partners to pull this plan together over the last 12 months. It's been roughly the right length of time to do it. It's been probably a bit longer than it normally would be and a bit more turgid because of COVID. But I think we've done a really good job considering what we were up against when we put it together. So we've put this plan together, working with all of our kind of stakeholders, strategic partners and businesses to make sure that we've got a plan that brings together all of the work of people already in the visitor economy, but also gives us a plan on how we can make the most of what we've got without impacting too much on the natural environment, but making sure that we are basically hitting all of the bells and whistles that Jeff went through when he did his introduction. So this is a process to help us manage the development of the visitor economy going forward. And the group that Paul talked about a while ago, when the tactical group, is the kind of group that came out of the work that we were doing on the destination management plan earlier last year. I'm not going to say next slide because that's terrible. So in terms of who owns it, whilst Visit Northumberland and Northumberland County Council have worked together to bring this plan together, it's not our plan, it's Northumberland's plan. So everybody is part of making sure it happens and making sure it takes it forward. And everybody, when I say that, that's from, and it brings together all of the policies and all of the strategies that other people have, so that we can join the dots and we can stop some of the duplication, and we can make sure that examples of best practice that are happening in one part of the county can be rolled out into another. And so we're working with everybody, and it has been a joy so far. So we're working with planners, transport people, environmental management, leisure and recreation, culture and the arts. It's all of those people, how they can all work together to make sure that we maximise the impact, the positive impacts on the visitor economy. So we want to make sure that we provide a high quality and distinct visitor experience. We want to make sure that we are respecting the needs of both the economy and communities, local people and the natural environment, which is a tricky juggling act. But I think with the partners we've got on board, so like Ian from the AOMB, the national parks, the council, all of those people working together, and we're making sure that we can actually balance the work that we're doing effectively. We want to make sure that we can increase the visitor economy contribution to the whole economy of Northumberland, but we also want to be environmentally responsible at the same time. So we're not talking about bringing in masses and masses and masses of people. We're talking about being able to provide the environment for the sort of figures that Neil was just reporting, in terms of people staying longer and spending more, rather than people coming for a couple of hours and then leaving. So that's the whole plan. If you look at the way the figures are changing, that's the kind of visitors that we're trying to encourage to come here, and those that are walking or leaving their car and enjoying Northumberland on different methods of transport. So the main priorities that we'll be focusing on now in terms of the action planning are around data, evidence and intelligence. So some of the stuff that Neil went through at the beginning, obviously the outcomes of Ian's transport strategy planning and research that he's doing. So it's taking all of that data that we can collate ourselves, but also the data that's coming out of visitor attractions and hotels, and creating a data hub so we can really see what visitors are thinking, when visitors are booking, when we've got high demand, low demand, what the issues are, and working together in an intelligence hub. And we've got a lot of interest from visitor attractions and from the private sector to actually help us to bring together that proper intelligence unit that will help us to make sure that we're focusing our activity really with a laser-like focus in the future. The second thing is about destination infrastructure and connectivity. So all of the stuff from car parking to signage to toilets to Wi-Fi, all of those areas, making sure that Northumberland is plugged in properly. In terms of position and profile, we're very much looking at a whole range of areas. That could be how we roll out the Northumberland brand, to the stuff that Paul's just gone through in terms of the communications for specific times of the year, but also in terms of how we kind of position Northumberland as a place to visit, not too far to get to, easy to get to, and how we then profile what we have to offer to the right people based on the intelligence and information that we've got from our evidence unit. And then the final area is all around how we work with businesses to get them to focus and develop what they offer to meet the requirements of the market. So if we are talking about wanting to increase the number of walkers in the area or the number of cyclists in the area, because it's more environmentally friendly, and then we need to make sure that the businesses are providing the right facilities to those people, whether it's boot rooms or drying rooms. And not that I know it never rains in Northumberland, but drying rooms for people that are out walking, or bike stores for people that are on their bikes, or how we work with businesses to do baggage transfers if people are walking and cycling along some of the routes that we have in Northumberland. So it's looking at that whole kind of product development to meet the market needs, and also the way we want to drive the market, and also finally around people development. So that will be around skills and welcome training, so that we can continue to have that 100% experience of a good welcome from visitors when they come to the area. So what we're doing now is we're looking at priorities and champions for each of those four priority areas, and we're going to be creating specific groups to start to develop the action plan. So if anybody's really interested in working with me on the infrastructure side, or you really wanted to work on some of the product side, then please do get in touch, because the sector groups that we had early in the year are now going to start to come together to work on proper action planning to take this forward. We'll then make sure that we've got the right people leading the right actions, like Paul, who took over the tactical visitor management group. Absolutely the perfect person to make that happen, and it made such a massive impact having somebody who's embedded in planning, which was the most important thing, to make sure that we got all the right partners around the table in the tactical visitor management, because it wasn't a tourism issue particularly, it was a destination issue. So that was that's the kind of thing we want to see coming forward. We will be reporting on outcomes regularly, and there will be a steering group for the destination management plan that will be made up from people from across Northumberland. Again, if anybody's interested in working with us on this to go forward, they just have to get into touch with me, and then we will have an annual review, and we'll report annually to the tourism forum that we have, and also through to the council and to any other stakeholder board. This is a 10-year plan. It'll be reviewed annually, and it'll be monitored regularly to make sure that we are focusing on the issues that are facing Northumberland, and that we can keep updating it. That's me. Thank you. Thank you, driver.
Okay, thank you. I think we can take down the slides now, because I think we're now going to look for feedback and questions. If you have any feedback or a question or a comment you'd like to make, could you please signify that by raising your hand, your artificial hand, if you can, and I'll try and find you. I see we've got Peter Bromley has put his hand up, so perhaps Peter, you could start the ball rolling.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm just kind of trying to make sure I've unmuted and put the video on and stopped doing what I was doing when the video was switched off. Thanks, Jeffrey. Thanks for all those presentations. I know this is mostly about the parish councils, but can I ask the four people that have, or the three people that have spoken about their details, that are they confident that the private sector and all the individual providers are signed up to some of these core objectives? And a second question, are they confident that all the core objectives that they've defined are aligned and represent a significant and cohesive strategy for the area? The reason I ask that is that the top line strategic aims from the three presentations seem to be slightly different, about the protection of the environment, about increasing numbers, about the kind of visitors that we were looking for. So I guess it's a question about, is the partnership robust, and have we got all the strategic aims in the right place and in the right order? Yeah, I think Maureen, you could answer that. I mean, it's an interesting comment because Neil and Maureen obviously work together on Visit Northumberland. So I'll let Maureen answer that one with help from Neil if you wanted. Carry on, please, Maureen.
Yes is the short answer, which I don't normally give a short answer because I do go on a bit, but so yes is the answer. I am very confident that the priorities are aligned. I mean, obviously they aren't our priorities just coming from our organisation. All of the kind of SWOT analysis that we went through, and when we came up with what the priorities were going to be, the amount of work we did with private sector, with stakeholders, with the strategic partners, with our partners in Visit Northumberland, you know, everything that's come out of this has been fed into by those people. We did surveys, we did one-to-ones, we've had action planning groups. So the answer is yes in terms of the alignment. When you actually, we'll make sure that you get a copy of the plan as it stands now, so you can actually see we've been through every single strategic document that is relevant to destination and to the economy, and we've made sure that we've pulled out the strategic aims of each of those documents so that we can make sure that the work we're doing is aligning. So I think Jeff's key objectives at the beginning was to reduce the pressure on communities associated with increasing visitor numbers, which is exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about making sure that we're focusing on looking after the economy and looking after visitor spend in the economy, but not at the detriment of local people and local communities. The second one of the objectives that Jeff went through was around a safe and welcoming visitor experience. Again, we're looking at skills and welcome and business development to make sure that we can continue to do that, and also protecting the qualities of the AONB. Well, I can assure you that every single time I have a conversation with Ian, it's writ large in absolutely everything we do, and that's why the vision that we have for the destination management plan is very much around being respectful to the natural environment and being a respectful destination across the piece. So I think our vision, and our priorities are very much aligned. But the beauty of the destination management plan is it is a partnership document. So it is the kind of document that we are all signing up to make sure that we are all working in the same direction.
Thank you. If you're happy with that, Peter, if you could kindly put your hand down. I see you've come in, Paul. Is it to answer this question as well?
Yeah, it was just really to echo the comments that Maureen made. So the destination management plan is effectively the top trump document in terms of what we're working to and intending to work to as part of our approach to managing and improving services going forward. So that's why when you see, yes, we are improving and enhancing some of the parking provision within the area, but we're also not just doing that exclusively. We're also working with Ian and his team and other transport providers to look at trying to get more people out of cars and into other forms of transport, because fundamentally encouraging more and more people just to drive into the area and to have to then accommodate those vehicles isn't the right thing to do. It has to be a measured approach and a balanced approach. So that's what we're trying to achieve through that.
Thank you, Paul. I've got a question from Gareth Davies.
Thanks, Jeff. For those who don't know me, my name is Gareth Davies. I'm the town clerk at Barrick upon Tweed. As usual, I'm going to ramble through an anecdote and then make a specific point in question. On my way into work this morning, a number 60 bus from Galashiels passed me. It's from Scotland, so it's got space on the bus for bicycles. Only 2, but that means that one bus can carry the same number of bicycles as any of the trains that come north from Newcastle, which accept bikes, which is only 1 every couple of hours and only 2 bikes per train. If we're going to get people out of their cars and using bikes, how are we actually going to connect the destination management plan, which as I understand it is strong on people using alternatives to cars, with the public transport planning that means there'll be enough space on buses and trains for people to bring their bicycles from further away than just the local region? I say I do it as a commuter, but it's very difficult. And if you turn up and there are already 2 bikes on the train, I'm stuck at Morpeth with my bike, or I have to find somewhere to leave it for the day. So how we can actually make that connection between the DMP and the strategic transport plans needed to get that capacity?
Maureen, I think you're going to reply.
Fantastic question, thank you. Absolutely, and that's very much part now of the groups of people that we're bringing together to actually start to deliver what we've said within what has been said within the destination management plan. So exactly the point that you have raised, not about the bus particularly, but about the facilities in order to move bikes around and to make it easier to do that. And that's something that was really high profile within the destination management plan, is something that we need to work on. So now our next stage is to bring together those people to actually make that difference. So if you are keen to come and help us to bring the right people together, then I would love to work with you on that. It's an open invitation to anybody who wants to put their, I was going to say put their oar in, but their spoke in, or get involved with us to bring the right people. We met with quite a few of the transport providers in the recent DCMS inter-ministerial group in Newcastle when I was up last. And these are the kinds of things that we raised with them as well, so across government too. So please do get in touch. But the work starts now on answering and on delivering on just the issue that you've raised.
Thank you, Maureen. Are you happy with that, Gareth? If you are, would you put your hand down, please? I perhaps just like to say to people that Maureen introduced herself and said she officially started on the 1st of April. Actually, Maureen's been with us for about a year working as a consultant, so she's not new to Northumberland by any means, and she did a very satisfactory job for us for that time. That's why we employed her. So that's how Maureen's here. Now, I've got another question from a neighbour of mine, Andy, from Warkworth Parish Council.
Yeah. Hi, Jeff. Hi, everybody. From my experience, I think that Northumberland is a few years behind what's been happening in places like Cumbria and Cornwall in terms of managing visitors. What are you doing to take the lessons that Cornwall and Cumbria are having with their significantly increased numbers, are you engaging with those organisations so that you are learning lessons so you can almost jump ahead of the problems that they've had?
I guess that's going to be you again, Maureen. Yeah. Maureen, by the way, lives in Torquay, so she's got an experience down there. So there you go, Maureen. You're hogging the show, though, Maureen. Come on.
Sorry. No, I think, yes, you're right. They are learning. They are also learning a lot of lessons, and we can see the issues that they are facing. But I don't want this to come out wrong, but I do think in some areas we are way ahead in terms of our planning and our future scoping. Having the tactical visitor management group that we had in the summer, we were way ahead of a lot of destinations. I can assure you. I live in Torquay. I can assure you we were way ahead up in Northumberland. But also we're way ahead in terms of the destination management plan and in terms of the partner engagement. So actually our destination management plan and the process that we've been through is really robust. So we have looked at what Cornwall, in fact, Malcolm Bell, who is the Chief Executive Visit Cornwall, he was up in the interministerial group with us up in Newcastle. So we were able to have those conversations, and I travelled back to the southwest with him. So, I think I know the people involved in the different destinations. I've worked for several different destinations before I ended up in Northumberland. So I do know what we face, and I do know what the issues are coming over the hill. But I also think that the way we have managed to bring people together and work together now, we are perhaps a little bit further ahead than most people would think we are in terms of how we are going to be able to manage and monitor this going forward.
I think, Paul, you were going to chip in as well.
Yeah, I think that we do have good networks with the likes of the AONBs. Neil Dawson's on the call, who works very closely with the national park as well as the AONBs, and obviously Ian's on the call. But during the summer we also worked very closely with the North Pennines AONB. Obviously that spans into Cumbria and over into County Durham. We do have good links with Cumbria and Cumbria County Council, being a Cumbrian myself. So, you've got somebody from Cornwall and somebody from Cumbria that are interloped into Northumberland. And I think that there has been a lot of work done in those locations. Obviously, the Lake District in particular has been massively impacted during COVID by increased visitor numbers. And certainly the approach that they've taken to managing that and working on a multi-agency basis has been very much mirrored in Northumberland. And, we worked very closely and kept an eye on what they were up to, and that did help inform our plans and vice versa. They learned a few things from us as well.
Thank you, Paul. Were you happy with that, Andy?
Yeah, that's fine. Just the second question, if I may, is there's not been any real mention of, not directly regarding CO2 reduction, supporting of EVs, sorting of electric bikes. I know it's a challenge. Is there a strategy regarding provision of those into some of the car parks, etc.? Certainly in Warkworth, as Jeff will know, is that there are actually more and more visitors turning up in electric cars. And I know that it's not necessarily a council responsibility, but encouraging some of the private companies, things like Morrison's, McDonald's, and some of those things to provide the electric points. Is that part of the strategy as well?
I think that's probably for you, Paul, is it?
It is. So we have a very good network of electric vehicle charging points in Northumberland at the moment, but it is something that we are continuing to enhance. We are targeting our key car parks as part of that process. But increasingly, there's a strategy coming forward to Cabinet quite soon that's looking at EV provision across the whole county. And a big element of what we'll be doing going forward is on-street charging points and making those available. And that's primarily because the majority of people, in terms of the adoption of electric vehicles. We need to make sure that people that actually don't have access to their own drive or their own garage are able to actually access EV charging points in their community. So it's not just looking at tourists and visitors, it's also looking at our residents as a key element of that approach. But there is significant capital funding within the council's medium-term financial plan to continue that rollout of those key strategic sites across the county. That's something that's ongoing at the moment. We're just putting some into Bellingham as an example at the moment, and there will be new ones going into the new car park development at Amble as part of the process there as well. So that's just an ongoing activity. There is significant government funding to support that rollout as well, and we are looking to try and tap into as much of that as possible to increase the pace. That is a key element of the council's transport strategy in terms of its active transport, but also the climate change reduction plans that the council has. That's one of the key elements in terms of tackling the increase in EV vehicle and trying to promote that.
Thank you. I'm pleased, Neil, you've because I was going to come to you and say, as a follow-on from Andy's question, is it a feature that you've come across when you've been talking to tourism people? So perhaps you could.
Yeah, it's Marv. Yeah, it's actually more to do with an opportunity that we're encouraging the tourism businesses to take up as well. So the government's got a workplace charging scheme where they're actively giving grants to small tourism related businesses, so bed and breakfasts, campsites, small hotels, accommodation businesses, so they're giving them grants to actually put that infrastructure in place as well. So this is something that we've come across in the last week or so, which we will be pushing through to our businesses to encourage them to apply for that as well. So even though we as Visit Northumberland don't have the infrastructure in place, we do have that network of the partners that we work with, and this is a great opportunity for them to get some grant funding to take that kind of thing forward as well. So if it were a local pub, or if it were a local accommodation provider, or a small hotel in the area, making those businesses aware of the availability of that sort of funding to make car charging possible is certainly something that we push through to the businesses that we work with.
Okay, we've got Ian and Robin McCartney to speak as well. Ian, you were first, but I think if you've seen Peter Bromley's chat, he's dead right, isn't he? It's the biggest thing we've got facing us coming over the next few years. Ian, you want to reply?
Just to add to what Paul said, really, the visitor travel and parking strategy work that Martin Higgett's doing for us, he's going to look at things like electric bike provision, where we might be able to provide kind of hubs for electric bikes so people can travel onwards on those, maybe even electric scooters potentially. He'll also look at in stage 2, look at the point that Gareth raised about bikes on buses, which we've never cracked yet. I've been trying to crack that one for 16 years. Gareth's still not cracked it with any of the operators, but we'll keep trying. And then also they're looking at EV provision as well. So they'll be working with Paul's team to look at EV provision, how that can be rolled out in a sensitive way in the ONB. So we are kind of all working together on that. Thank you. And Robin, I think you want to come in on this as well.
All my points have been raised, so I've just taken my hand down. Thanks.
Robin is in the highways department, so yeah, the questions have been answered. Okay, I don't see any more hands up at the moment. So I'm going to ask Paul a question. Last year, Paul, we looked at sort of overflow car parks in certain areas, which were seen to be very successful certainly in my patch. Do we intend to do it again this year? And are we looking at potentially making some of these overflow car parks a bit more durable and become a permanent feature?
In terms of the overflow car park provision, the majority of that was actually undertaken by individual private landowners and by town and parish councils working with their local landowners. There has been a significant change in terms of the government's approach, though, that previously you could undertake that for 56, I think it was, days of the year without planning consent. That's now been reduced back to the pre-COVID arrangements of just 28 days. So that is a bit of a sticking point, but certainly in the likes of Amble, we will be looking at the Amble Braid area. Again, I think as much because we will be taking out of action part of the or most of the car park in the town centre for the redevelopment works there that will be ongoing through, up until the start of the summer holidays. So during that period, we will be looking at alternative provision in those key locations. I think the key thing is just whether there are parking pressures, it is just keeping in dialogue with the county council through Robin and his team, because we will be responsive to tackle, problem areas. What we're not going to be doing though is double yellow lining the whole county. It is, just taking a measured approach to those areas where there are problems that are of a seasonal basis, and the issue around the agricultural harvesting season being a really good one, where we know that there's particular pinch points. We'll work with the landowners and the farmers and the locals in at those times to tackle some of those pinch points. And we can do that on a seasonal basis. We don't need to yellow line the whole of the county and to put lots of effectively urban clutter in places where it doesn't need to be.
Thank you, Paul. I see we've got Jen Hall's got a question for us.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, can I ask two questions with two different hats on, please? First of all, my question for Neil about the tourist survey. I was very surprised to see there was only 5% of people were self-catering. That seems a very low number. But was there any question about the spend by types of accommodation? So were people staying in hotels spending more? Were people staying in caravans or camping or self-catering or whatever? I just wondered if those figures were available, because they'd be very interesting.
We didn't have spend by accommodation type. We did have length of stay by accommodation type, but not spend by accommodation type. Certainly in terms of those numbers that we managed to extract during that survey, we'll probably get a better understanding of those figures when we get the full annual response. We collate something called the STEAM volume and value report every year. There's always a lag with that. That's very much more looking at bed stock and information in terms of the spend per head, and there's more detail that comes through for that. Obviously, again, in terms of the numbers that were staying in self-catering accommodation, they were low, certainly lower than the average that we would normally see for the year. But again, I think that may just have been the sample size and the sample timing, because it was just a 6-week window during the summer period. It didn't reflect the whole year, but certainly the STEAM data, when that comes through, usually towards the end of May, early June, for the 2020 figures will be a lot more robust.
Thank you.
And I think Maureen, you're going to chip in as well before your second question, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to say that if you remember in my presentation, the first priority was around data, evidence and intelligence. And we have got a lot of businesses who want to actually work with us to provide data. And it's that kind of data we'll be able to get directly from businesses, obviously anonymized, averages, but it will really help us to get a much better picture of how long people are staying and how much they're spending in particular sector type, accommodation sector type. So bear with us on that one, because that's one of the first action groups we want to bring together. And Andrew Fox, who is the gentleman at Flaley, is actually leading that evidence and intelligence group. He is so committed to be able to get together the kind of data that you're talking about for.
Thank you. So back to you, Jen, for your second question.
Yes, the second one's about electric vehicles. About 6 or 9 months ago, this is with a business hat on. I'm connected to a caravan site in the area. We've been looking at putting in chargers for electric vehicles and whether we should do it and whether we should charge for them or whether we should provide them free. And about 6 or 9 months ago, I contacted Northumberland County Council because I can't find any guidance out there, any support. There's plenty of people who want to sell us them. But if you don't know a lot about them, it's a bit like signing up for broadband or anything else. what speed do we need? Are there issues about electricity supply in rural areas? Where should we put them? Is there any guidance? And I contacted Northumberland County Council and it all seemed very positive, but then I've heard nothing since. And we're still in the same position. We don't know whether to go forward with them or not. We probably could, but we don't know where to place them. You know, so it's just been put on the back burner. And I think lots of small businesses, as you were referring to, would have the same problems as ourselves. Yes, there's plenty of people wanting to sell us them, as I said, but there's not a lot of support out there. Even something, you know, 2 pages of A4 would be helpful.
I think that's one for you, Paul.
Yeah, that's certainly something we can have a look at, Jen. What I would say is, as part of the strategy that we are looking to take to Cabinet, part of that is as an income generating activity as well. So we have trained up our own and have our own in-house installation team now undertaking electric vehicle charging point provision. And that's something that we will be looking to offer as effectively as a service as part of the ongoing provisions within the council. So that's something that we might kind of knocking on your door, looking to actually install them and to have that dialogue with yourself regarding that.
So somebody else trying to sell us them, right? You are.
Sell them and maintain them though, and
well, that's another
service.
thing. Yeah.
But all those issues that you mentioned are key ones in terms of, you know, it's what's the power within the actual local network. What's the actual demand of the people that are using it? Is it overnight or is it rapid? All those things are key considerations in terms of the type of kit that you need.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. John Riddle, was your hand up in relation to this as well, or was it a question you've got?
It was in relation to answer for Jennifer a little bit, really. I mean, we've got one holiday cottage here, and we had a couple came with their electric car, and off his own bat, the gentleman paid me £30 in cash for the electricity he'd used to charge his car. It was very good of him. He didn't need to because we don't charge. So it's a warning, really, that, you know, he was only here for 4 days. These cars don't charge up on electricity for nothing. So, you know, be very careful, Jennifer, about considering doing it as a perk. It costs you money. And the other point is that Gareth mentioned about bicycles and whatnot. We get a lot of visitors coming from a distance. For instance, the ones this week were in from Birmingham. You know, they bring their bicycles on the tops of their car and they use the bikes when they're here. So, you know, it's not all trains and buses.
Thank you, John. I've got Bill. I don't know your second name, Bill, but you've got a question.
It's Barbara, actually.
Okay. Well, you were in disguise as Bill, it says here.
I know. It's a couple of questions for Paul, actually. You mentioned in your dialogue earlier about the car parking charges that had gone up, and obviously in Bamborough they've gone up, well, not considerably, but you know, by a percentage, and that was to improve more car parking facilities. Looking forward to this summer, you know, we had the dispensation last year of being able to open the glebe field up beside the church for 56 days, and now that's going to be impossible because the directive is 28 days, and although we asked for more yellow lines, and you've said tonight that, you know, you don't want a yellow line everywhere in Northumberland, which I can, you know, understand. But we're now, you know, in a dilemma because over the Easter period, I mean, we had huge car parking problems even in the village. That was due to yellow lines being hidden by leaves and everything, and that was eventually, you know, resolved. But I just wondered, you know, with all, you know, that I've just said, that whether you can answer me.
We aren't proposing any additional parking capacity provision within Bamburgh, because obviously all the issues that just creating more and more parking in itself doesn't actually address the problem of the number of people coming there by car. Certainly, we'll more than happily have some dialogue with yourselves in terms of what we can do to support yourselves and the local landowner in terms of the use of seasonal overflow parking arrangements, and that's something that we'll happily have that dialogue with yourselves and with our planners as to what can and can't be done in relation to that. So you stay the right side of the law in terms of the planning side. Really, you can look at temporary planning consents to do some of those activities, but obviously there's a lead in time to secure those as well. But I think we probably just need to have that discussion offline around that, Barbara, as to what can and can't be done within Bamburgh, given that the government has changed that 56-day issue now to the 28. That is something that is getting lobbied, though. There is quite a pushback, I think, nationally from some of the national parks in particular regarding that, because they saw that as being a real helpful way of tackling some of the problems they'd faced over the past 2 years.
Yeah, thank you. And very quickly, the other question is that obviously in Bamburgh car park, we're obviously going to have the overnight stays of camper vans, etc., which have already started. And today we had a voluntary litter picking, and it was noted that in the car park we had an enormous amount more litter, which has been, throughout the village, obviously over the weekend. And so if we're going to have this on a permanent basis, is NCC expecting the parish councils to finance the extra bins, or are they going to help us towards that?
So we're servicing the containers. We have put additional containers in those areas where we are undertaking the pilots schemes for motorhome overnight stay. It is something that I think, as part of the pilot, that's one of the impacts and the lessons that we'll see how that pans out. But the expectation is that we are increasing the actual provision within those key locations. When you start looking at the wider provision of bins, across the litter bins across the county as part of the town and parish charter, that does remain the town and parish council's responsibility. So we'd have to pick up that as part of that wider dialogue, because we wouldn't want to set any precedents in relation to providing facilities, county-wide on that basis.
So does that mean I've got to speak sweetly again to Bob?
Certainly, in terms of any seasonal issues, we are more than happy just to put out some additional wheelie bins and things such as that at those pinch point sites, but those are just a temporary measure,
Yeah. Okay. So he would be able to help us if that becomes a huge problem.
Yeah, more than happy to do that. We don't want people leaving litter all over the place.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Catherine Seymour, you've got a question, I think. If you could put your hand down, please, Barbara.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm the County Councillor for Barrick North, and I just wanted to thank the presenters for the updates, and also the extra £1.5 million of capital investment for the improvements to facilities, and such as the toilets, and the car parks and electric chargers. And I'm really pleased to see that being a regular train and bus user myself, that extra buses have been put on in Boulder. So the other thing is, I just wondered from Paul, this is a question to Paul, about the overnight parking pilot scheme. There's 3 areas that you've started in, and I just wondered, when you're going to review this, and if it's successful, have you identified any other areas in the county?
The intention is that we review how the pilots performed into the autumn this year. Obviously, just monitoring that over the summer period, and obviously getting feedback from those town and parishes that have got those motorhome pilot areas within their patch. We did identify a broader number of locations that could potentially take motorhomes, but we didn't. We tried to focus just on those three as being some of the key tourism spots, and are really mindful that it's trying to find that balance where you don't want them to be, you know, causing an overnight noise and issues within a local residential areas, particularly in some of the town centres. So it's just striking that balance. But as part of the process, if we are successful, and it is a really successful pilot, and we get good feedback from both the town and parishes and the people that are actually using the facilities, it's something that we will look to have that further dialogue with any of the other town or parish councils that we would think are suitable to have car parks adjusted to accommodate that going forward. It's not something that we would just do as a unilateral decision. We'd have that dialogue to see if there was support for that approach in those areas, and to effectively roll out the scheme if it does prove successful into a wider area.
Yeah, I think as confidence is growing, you know, throughout the county, throughout the country, for travelling now, people feel more comfortable. I've noticed that there's quite a few vehicles that are camping in our car parks. So it's just, I know some of the enforcement officers chase them out, but you know, it is something that people seem to want to do more now. You know, have their own camper van to travel around. So I think really we need to provide more places for them. So I'm glad to see this parking pilot scheme is in place, but I would like to see a few more.
Okay, thank you very much.
I think the other thing about that, sorry, is that it's not solely just the county council. Obviously, one of the key things that you see across and in other parts of the UK and, you know, over into France and places like that, is that it is pubs and other places that have their own car parks that try and attract people to use them as part of their overnight stay provision if they're frequenting those premises. So that is again something that it's not just the county council, it's part of that wider destination management plan approach, working with other tourism and hospitality sector to make Northumberland as welcoming as possible to as diverse a range of people as possible.
Yeah, I think you're right, Paul, but I was pleased to say that our traffic wardens gave a ticket to some illegal parking the day before or yesterday on the beach car park in Warkworth. He was there at 6 o'clock in the morning to do it. So, you know, I think people need, that message needs to get around, I think, to people. Thank you for that, Catherine. Would you put your hand down now, please? Wendy, you've got a question. Wendy Patterson.
Thank you very much, Chair. It was really just something that Jen said about electric points, charging points. I tried to look into putting something in via my members allowance at High Newton car park, but it was astronomical because there's no electricity there. And that's one of the issues. If we're going to put in electric charging points, we need to have electricity fairly near. And in that particular case, there wasn't any. So that I do think is something that we need to look at, especially in rural areas. And this was a car park, quite a busy car park, and there's just no way that I could do it from my members allowance. I can't remember the cost. But I think, John Roper, you're sitting in on this, aren't you, Councillor Roper? I don't know whether you can remember, because we were copied into the cost of it, and it was astronomical, as I recall. I don't know whether John's still there or not. He may have gone. I don't know.
Can you hear me, Wendy?
Yeah, I can, John, yes.
Yeah,
can you remember how much it was?
I believe it was about £25,000.
Right, right. I thought it was more than that, John, actually. I don't know, mind, I might be wrong.
That's the figure that sticks in my mind, Wendy, about 25,000.
Yeah, yeah. So it is fairly expensive to do it if you are in a rural area without any electricity nearby, and there's no street lamps, of course, so there's no power point at all. The other thing I wanted to mention, it was Ian Robson, if you're still there, Ian. Councillor Adrian Hinchcliffe from Long Houghton actually sent me an email about seeing buses going through Boomer. And he said, do you know anything about it? And I said, no. I said, can you see what company they are? And he hadn't noticed. Are they running now, Ian, through Boomer? Are these buses in operation now?
Yes, there must be, Wendy. I wasn't sure what date the start date was for the summer services, but basically they're in now for the summer season. So there'll be, I think it's 5 buses a day in each direction through Boomer, but they'll be run through Travelshire on the 418 service.
Wow, that's excellent. I don't think the residents can be aware of it, Ian.
Possibly not yet. I think it was agreed right at the end of the financial year, but that they've managed to get those services secured for this summer. So it is great news. We'll be doing some. So I'll speak to the public transport team, and we'll get a press release out and make a bit more of it, and try and encourage visitors to get on the bus to Boomer.
Lovely. Thanks very much. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm finished now.
Right, Martin Swinbank, question from yourself.
Yes, thank you, Jeff. It's a question with regard to mobile homes, really. Obviously, we've got the places now for people to park in them legitimately, which is good. A question, it's sort of a general question to see what the situation is up and down the coast. I obviously represent Almouth, is the kind of bit of the coast that I represent. And the question is being raised about on-street parking of mobile homes, whether that's legal, whether it's a good thing, whether it's a bad thing. Anecdotally, Parish Council was saying there were 6 in the village the other night. Is there any controls that we have on that? Do we encourage it? Do we not?
That's probably one for you, but Paul. But I mean, I could answer that one. The actual law is that provided the vehicle is taxed and does not cause an obstruction, it can come and park outside of my house. That's what the law says. But I'm sure, Paul, you'll say more.
Yeah, you're entitled to park the vehicle as long as you're not obstructing. If you're keeping in it overnight, again, there's no enforcement approach to that. It's only if we've actually got traffic regulation orders in place that prohibit parking rather than on street that would have any impact or any bearing on that. And that wouldn't be so much actually sleeping in the vehicle, it's just parking the vehicle outside of certain time constraints or whatever the parking order says. That's not clearly the case when you start talking about off-street parking, because the parking orders that we can put in place in our car parks can prohibit overnight sleeping in vehicles, and that's what we do across the county at the moment, with the exception of those sites that are actually on that pilot scheme.
Okay, but for on-street parking, basically, we have no way of controlling it if we wish to do so.
Not without putting double yellows or single yellows with a parking order, traffic regulation order in place to prohibit parking at particular times of the day.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
I have to say, Martin, this has been something that's been coming up for the last couple of years, and it's real annoying, but unless the government changes its policy, I don't think there's much we can do about it. So thank you. Another one from Sean Almouth. Sean from Almouth, BC. You have a question? We can't hear you. If you're there, Sean, we still can't hear you. Okay, sorry.
He needs to unmute. He needs to unmute, that's all.
Well, it doesn't show mute on my screen, but never mind, perhaps it is. If you try unmuting yourself, Sean. You're on, yeah, it does show on mute now. You're showing on mute and we can't hear you, Sean. You need to unclick your mute button there, I think. No. Sorry. Sorry, can't get you. I think we'll have to.
Might have to use the chat. The chat, I think, Sean.
Yeah. Yeah, put something in the chat or contact us afterwards. Right, Paul, then I'm going to come back to you now to say, I think we're probably just about wrapped up.
It was really just, sorry, it was really just on the back of having some colleagues from both the police and the HM Coast Guard on the call tonight, just if they had any comments or feedback or input that they would like to make before we wrap up.
Are you there, police and Coast Guard?
Good evening. Yeah, you've got Ryan Douglas from the Coast Guard. No, this is the first meeting I've been able to join. I believe my colleague's been on in the past, but no, nothing to feedback, but been quite interesting. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And
Cheers.
anybody from the police there like to make any comment?
Yeah, hi, good evening. It's John Swan, the Neighbourhood Inspector for Northumberland. It's just to pass on that has already been said, really, which is the last couple of years there's been some great partnership work, and I see that continuing again this year, and hopefully we'll have a successful summer.
Good. I know that you've been working well together, and because I know Paul's been waxing lyrical about the cooperation you've had, so I'm pleased about that. Thank you very much indeed. So, Paul, I think this it's been interesting conversations, interesting discussions. I hope we're going to have another one later in the year. So before, I don't know what we at the end of the year or the middle of the year, but perhaps we can talk about that and set it up again.
I think it's helpful to have kind of a recap at the year end just to see how things have gone and learn any lessons, again, just as part of that planning for the future. But I would really just encourage people to keep in touch over the summer period, and if there are issues, you know who we are, how to contact us. We are going to be having that further dialogue with those multi-agency stakeholders to probably not to the same extent, because we were doing that on a weekly basis last summer, but certainly keeping in regular contact with them over this summer as well. So we do hope to get that intelligence and to work collectively to try and mitigate and tackle problems, ideally to prevent them from occurring in the first place, but to be flexible and responsive to tackle things as and when they arise as well.
Thank you, Paul. And knowing how frustrating it is when you've got a question and you can't be heard, Sean, I'm going to give you one more chance to see if we can hear you this time. Give it a go. And the answer is we can't. I'm awfully sorry. You must be frustrated. I know I would be. Okay, can I just say, Lynn, to everybody who participated tonight, thank you very much indeed. I hope you found it interesting. I certainly learned some things tonight that I didn't know before. And I think generally we are trying to get on top of this. There are lots of issues being sort of thrust upon us. We're actually the victims of our own success, I think, in some ways. But when you consider how much money that this council gets and this county gets from tourism, it's something that we've got to live with and manage the best we can. But with that, can I just say thank you very much again and good night.